Hello, everybody. Here we are on another Tuesday night round table. No, this is the bull ring. Sorry, Tuesday night bull ring. A little short on guests tonight. Summertime. Less people got stuff going on. That's just the way it is. Maybe some others will jump in. We'll see. I got Rosie O'Kelly here with me though. Me and her is going to do our best to keep y'all entertained for a little while, and make sure. There we go. So anyway, without further ado, Rosie, would you like to do an intro? And you can go ahead and bust off and get started if you want.
Yeah, thanks. Anyway, welcome everybody. Let me just get my side chat here. We've got the skeleton crew here for you tonight. We're right down to, I guess we are starting into our peak vacation time, and it's certainly the slowest time on YouTube. And you all know me from the Rosie O'Kelly channel, Variety Shenanigans, and then the Rosie Murphy channel. Usually a little more serious topic material, economics, investing, at least once a week on that. And it's really ironic that here we are almost coming up, well, we're definitely into summer now. And it's a real rarity in the markets to have something that's hitting the fan in the summertime. It's almost unprecedented, but for once, Asia, the United States, South America, we're not the lead dogs in what's going on in the world. All the action has been over in Europe, and what a lot of action it's been over the last 2 weeks. It's been stressful for me. I've been up at all points overnight. It's been trading gold, silver, other things, getting a little less sleep than usual, but a little more plugged in than usual to what's going on over the last couple of weeks. Because in my lifetime, when I tell you that I've been following the markets since 1980, that's a long time. That's 35 years now, and all the time I've been involved in following markets, this is the most unprecedented time I've seen in the history of the world here in terms of what's going on, not just with currencies, not just with the potential breakup of the EU system, but also in terms of the fallout from failed stimulus packages, the QE1s, 2, 3, 4s worldwide. I think in my lifetime, I've seen a lot of stimulus take place. I've seen under Bush, I've seen checks mailed out. I've seen under Obama checks mailed out. I've seen cash for clunkers. But we've really reached kind of the point here where the governments around the world are running out of things to pull into their bags of tricks. TR, I don't know if you remember Bush sent everybody a check after 9/11. Every family got 500 for an individual, 1,000 for a family. I think that was, and it's okay. It helps smooth out things, but that was a different time period back then. We had 5-6% interest rates. We were on a very normalized kind of world. The Federal Reserve had a lot of operating room. They could cut rates 12 times, 14 times in a row, and it would take them that long to get down to the level we are today, but they would never get there because things would improve, the demand for money would go up, and things would heal themselves. But we've now reached a point where things are failing to heal themselves after all the efforts that have been done. TR, you remember last time I told you interest rates are now the lowest in recorded history, really, at least for 500 years. What do you think when you hear that? You think that we're in uncharted waters here? You think something strange is?
Yeah, definitely something strange is going on. I mean, our whole financial system set up on fractional banking, and that, with the feet, well, that's a different thing. But anyhow, that's what we've kind of set our whole system up on, and since they've gone down that low, it's killed incentive to save money. It's killed a lot of incentive for a lot of things.
Yeah, it's caused a lot of dislocations in the economy, and it's starting to take people away from the idea that the Federal Reserve, by just manipulating interest rates, can create prosperity in a country. And we're all starting to see how mistaken that notion is in our economy. Why isn't it working? Because the interest rates don't even know what to stimulate anymore. You know, are the interest rates supposed to stimulate business, or is a quantitative easing supposed to stimulate business? And there's this, we're just at a loggerheads now that there's just such mass confusion I've never seen in my lifetime worldwide. You know, what the cure is for what ails the world economy. Well, obviously, we could talk about Bretton Woods sometime, and the 1944 agreement that hammered out the what we would call managed currencies, floating currency system, where we wouldn't use gold, but we would be free floating to some extent, backed by conservative fiscal policy, whatever the hell that is. And you can see where we are today. You can see the pound at a 30-year low. An already creaky U.S. economy is now looking at a higher U.S. dollars, flight for capital, from flight for safe haven from Europe. So there's a lot of things that are making people understand now that the Federal Reserve is really irrelevant to the prosperity of a country. Just like the Japanese had to discover that interest rates and stimulus packages weren't going to be helpful to the success of getting the Japanese economy refloated, because they had Japan 150 miles, 200 miles away from them. And that was the real bugaboo that was causing all the issues, just as China is causing those issues worldwide today. So we have those record low interest rates. Gwen's asking, what about Brexit and the effects on world financial market? Yeah, I've got a lot of material tonight, and it actually looks like a great night tonight. Because
seem like, and this probably has to do with my generation, you know, or you know, when I grew up stuff, and this was just kind of true for me to a certain degree personally, but seemed like, even though there were some bubbles that popped and things looked good on the surface, but there were things going on that, you know, it could go wrong anytime. But it's at the same time, the 90s seemed to be a good time for America, at least in my eyes. Maybe, you know, and I wasn't paying attention to everything, don't get me wrong, but it seemed like we were doing pretty good, even though we had the dot-com bubble. And there was some other stuff going on, and there was some shifting around of the way the government claimed our debt level was and stuff, I know. But it seemed like interest rates were fairly down. Jobs were plentiful. Everything seemed to be going good. Like I say, it's probably all because we was riding a bubble. But regardless,
well, were we riding a bubble in this country and worldwide? Or were we riding an unprecedented wave of productivity gains because of computerization and information technology was allowing tremendous profits to be accrued in areas of the economy that hadn't been accrued before, because the early adopters of high technology had the ability to go out there and find and exploit price differentials and values in markets that other slow to adopt corporations and people could never find out there. So what we were riding was that wave of growing those businesses that could help make business more profitable, not necessarily expand it dramatically, but make it more profitable. You've heard of companies like Oracle Systems. All they do is manage databases. You remember Sun Microsystems, and there were value added, like IBM's tried to push into this area. They're all the ones that rationalize and try to exploit those areas of the economy where profitability is great. But we don't have that driver like we had in the 90s, TR. We do not have that driver. We have oil prices turning downward again. And concurrently and strangely, we got airline stocks going down strangely at the same time, even though these low oil prices should be the greatest boost to airlines in the history of the world, their operating costs. So there's a lot of unprecedented things going on in here. And these are the things I want to drive home to you guys. So Gwen asks about the breakup of the European Economic Union. And I'm going to tell you what, the big thing that it spells is instability. Like many people, I thought that the Brits would vote to stay within the EU because the enemy you know is sometimes better than the enemy you don't know. And now Britain has to go out and negotiate 50 separate trade agreements with major international partners. They have to figure out what the status is going to be of the 2 million British expats that work overseas in these countries. They have to figure out what the borders and culture thing, how it's all going to work. They have a big job to do. And it's not going to go easy because on the other side of the picture, the French, the Germans, the Italians, they're not going to like the fact that Britain basically has turned their back on the EU, and it's going to cause instability within that union. And therefore, it's not surprising that we see the British pound start to go down. We see the banks in Deutsche Bank and Barclays and Lloyd's and Hong Kong, Shanghai Bank of London. We see these banks now trading below lows that they traded during the financial crisis in 2008. That's like the canary in the coal mine here that's telling you all is not well, and there's not money to be made. And banking is like the worst business to be in the world now because there's nobody wants to borrow, and there's nobody that money keeps coming in, and they got nothing to do with it. So we all see what happens to our Venezuela when economic stress. What does it immediately lead to? Political instability. I mean, we're talking about starvation in what used to be a first world country in Venezuela because of socialism and government mismanagement. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the same kind of things happening and beginning to break out in Europe now as the stresses of a weakening economy and political instability within the European Union. Because if one country thinks, well, why should I stick in if Britain didn't stick in? Then they've got a problem. So what's the fallout? What is the fallout from all of this? For the big question is, what are managed currencies really worth? What is a pound worth in a day? I mean, is it worth $1.30 or is it worth $1.60 that it was 6 months ago? You know, we have this. We're starting to go haywire here. It's like the clock spring is starting to go nuts here, and things are going up and down, and people are starting to lose their sense of what value is. And consequently, TR, you saw at the same time the U.S. dollar was rallying, unusually in history, you also saw gold take a big leap in the last week or so when this whole EU thing came down. Because as I said in my upload on Sunday night on the Rosie Murphy channel, gold is a truth teller. It's always going to tell the truth about what's going on out there. And gold had a sense that instability is stalking the land now, and the next big crisis in the world is going to be trying to figure out what all these various currencies are worth.
I mean, well, it's no secret. I mean, the whole world is in a economic, I don't know what the right word is, but nobody's flourishing really. I mean, I watched a little video the other day. I was just trying to point out about that Nigel. I don't know how to say his last name. Nigel Fargel or whatever he is. He's been a big opposition to the EU for years, and he's a. I don't know what his position is in England or the UK, but he's always on the EU panel, and he's just basically telling the EU to fuck off all the time. And I was watching the video from 2010 to show my buddy at work. And there he was talking about Greece's economy, how they're going in, get down the shitter. And and I was like, we just looked at each other and it's like, man, Greece has been in trouble for a long time. This is something that's come to a head.
Well, let's look at it this way. If you have a baseball team and some is composed of single A ball players and some are major leaguers, you got an imbalance there. You got an imbalanced roster. Now, how can you have an economic union with a common currency when the demands in the economy within Germany are far different than they are in Portugal or Spain. The culture is different. The work ethic is different. The whole export mechanism. What affects Spanish exports, in theory, could be different from what affects German exports and Portuguese exports, but they all tie themselves together in this union, and especially within the euro, and it's just caused all these stresses that are just exerting unnatural forces on these economy. And that's why we see, I wouldn't be surprised over time to see things break off into individual units again, and the Deutschmark comes back, and et cetera, the French franc, et cetera, and things just rebuild off of an individual country basis. So,
well, I think I don't mean to interrupt you, Rosie.
No, we got a long way to go here. So
yeah, I think, and this is true. This is true probably for any country, for any economy or whatever, and us as well. But I think for Britain, yeah, I think they're going to go through some hard times for a little while. But as long as the absolute shit don't hit the fan, in the end, they'll be better off. There's no way you're going to break off from the EU, something they've been doing for, decades now, and things just get great all of a sudden. Just like you're talking about the pound dropping and blah, blah, blah. There'll be a little bit of a rebuilding process there for them. And in order to get better, things got to get worse first, and I think that's true for us as well in any other country.
Yeah. So let me
go through some hard times and get through that.
That's exactly right. You know how much dead wood is in these economies, how much structural rottenness is in these economies, programs and things. The real issue here is, TR, looking back at, and I think you're a student of history to some extent. Britain has always been a great trading nation, a great exploring nation, and a great financial nation. When early capitalism was set up, the Dutch, the British were right at the heart of setting up early colonial capitalism. So what is the best asset that Britain has had around the world over the last 250 years? It's been their banking system that's basically the only true global banking system in the world. Has really been the British system. Of course, they're deep into Europe, but over in Asia, in Hong Kong and Singapore, places like that, Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, a huge British conglomerate, has been big over there. Standard Chartered Bank, all these banks that grew up and helped grow these economies overseas. Now, normally I would say, yeah, we have to go through those bad times to get rid of that dead wood. But how are banks going to make their money now? In other words, how do you rebuild your share value? We're talking about today Barclays Bank at like $7 or some ridiculous. I mean, this used to be $30, $40 a share. We're talking about HSBC at 23 or something. It used to be $80. We're talking about really erstwhile blue chip stocks that are flat on their ass right now, and they are hurting big time because bond trading has been wiped out because of low interest rates. Currency trading has been wiped out. The stocks are on the chopping block now, at least in the European sector. So the ways to make money and also the demand for lending is just so slim right now that you tell me, to me, I think that the markets are a fair judge of the value of British stocks by putting them at sub 2008 levels, because I think they're going to have a much harder time going forward now that they're not going to be as important in world financial circuits, their circles, their backbone banks. But don't kid yourself that Britain's always had its greatest financial assets, long-standing relationships with foreign countries in their banking networks and stuff. And that's always been a strength for them, but I expect that that's going to be tested now. Gwen asked a good question. Is it really a time to buy those bank stocks? Well, if you're a really gutsy investor, and I'm not going to tell you, you can sort of, my history. I'm not going to tell you whether I bought or not, because it's not fair to You know, I mean, I'm not a financial. I used to be a registered investment advisor, but not anymore. And I don't want to get run afoul of anything. But you know, do you want to buy high, or do you want to? You know, is Britain going to let their banks fail? You know, I don't know. You can jump in anytime, but all these banks are 80% off of their highs, and capital write-offs are coming in. They're already writing off, like the British banks are writing off petroleum debt. That's a lot of that's gone bad with lower oil prices. You know, BP is the biggest private payer of pensions in the UK, and you can imagine the dividend flow that a BP has when they issue those semi-annual dividend payments to pension funds and retirement funds. That's big. You know, BP was a huge company, British Petroleum, and now all that stuff has been cut. It's a very deflationary sort of environment there. The banks just simply can't survive, much less prosper in this economy. There's probably too much bank for the world right now. Wouldn't you say, TR? There's too much bank for the world. There's too much retail for the world. There's too much bricks and mortar. They're closing bricks and mortar banks now because there's, you know, they can't. It's like things are receding now. They cannot afford the infrastructure of supporting a vast network of bricks and mortar operation. There's too much bank for relative to the activity going on now. Jump in. Yeah.
I think getting back a little bit, and this is just my limited perspective. Like I was talking about how everything was just booming, and you're right. The technology, there was a big technology boost in the 90s. I mean, a lot of it was just improvements, but it was just growing by leaps and bounds, you know. And I think that built up the entire world to a certain degree, and business were just expanding, and then it leveled off, and then we had, like, you know, 9/11 and different things has happened, and everything built up so big. It built up too fast almost, and the infrastructure underneath it. And I may not be saying it right.
No, you're saying it
perfectly. It was almost like a false hope of it's just going to keep going.
Exactly, and all it effectively did was allow us to move from using an abacus like they use in Chinese times to a computer in a matter of 20 years or so. The reality is that efficiency created by the flow of information helped initially drive a tremendous profit boom, as a lot of profit was sucked out. It was a very good business to go in and to TR's company and say, you know, we just have this new software that can analyze all these operations that you're doing here. And according to our calculations and our studies, if you do this, you'll boost your output 28%. Your bottom line profitability will be levered to about the 56%. Well, let's give it a whirl and see what happens. All this went on over 1 million companies all over the place. But where do you squeeze it out now? Everybody in the world, whether it's TR in South Carolina or me in California, we all have the same access to the same information at the same point in time. That we can see the effect of that being visited on bricks and mortar retailing now, as Sears and Kmart and even Kohl's, Macy's, they're all suffering because of information technology. That great thing 30 years ago is squeezing the hell out of them now and taking the last bit of juice out of an economy. Well, if you're a capitalist, you believe that things evolve, things move forward. Pretty soon the next big thing, it always arrives on the horizon, whether it's space age, you know, in the 1950s and 60s with space technology, or whether in the transistor, or whether it was this railroads in the 1840s. There's always some driver that eventually comes along to lead us to the next promised land. But we're in one of these interim dark valleys now, like similar to the 1930s. And what's really hurt us is, instead of things collapsing and starting to rebuild, we've had this muddled up, like shoring up the thing with sticks under it. And everybody's propping it up and trying to keep it balanced, but before the whole shitty thing kind of falls over. So, you know, I couldn't believe it when I was watching. They're considering more stimulus efforts now. I mean, it's like, you know, when does it fucking end? I mean, it's just like this guy stood up in Parliament and just fell backwards. He's like, are you, you know, stimulus again? How's that working for us? And it's just, it's lunacy. I don't want to say we're getting close to panic, but you can understand why gold and silver and traditional stores of value are starting to really pop up now and be noticeable. So I really think that the unemployment, the fallout of this EU thing, I think they've lost $3 trillion in value. That's a huge capital hit in the markets just in the last, I think just on the Friday alone, the hit was huge in that market. So, but you know what you haven't heard about? What economy haven't you heard about, TR? You haven't heard a peep about in the last 3 weeks or a month?
Heard about who?
What's that huge economy you haven't heard a peep about in the last month when all this shitstorm is swirling around Europe and some parts of the United States? What huge mega economy haven't you heard a peep about?
China.
Yeah. You know what, guys? China has just sailed along on this thing. You haven't heard word one about what's going on in China. Because sad to say, and I might get some people hate me on the side chat, but the Chinese economy is better founded on its foundations than than most Western economies. And I know I might get a lot of flack for that, but China is big enough to create its own weather. Okay, now, do you know what that means? It's like the United States is big enough to create its own weather. We're big enough to sustain external hits, the U.S. to much less extent than China. But China has so much undeveloped within its internal areas and its internal populations that they basically don't need the external world. And it's really showed with the stability of their stocks, particularly over this 2-week period when things have been hitting the fan. So this is why I continue to invest in China, because I want to ride that stability and I want to ride that appreciating Chinese currency over there.
I know you talk about China a lot, and you know a lot about it. But bottom line, I mean, China's been hurt by this world economy degrading. You know, people's tightening their wallets up. They're not spending as much money, not buying as much stuff. But in the end, most of the shit we buy still comes from China.
Well,
so even if the market's down, they're still making stuff and they still selling stuff.
Yeah, we can cry a river because you know, China is only going to grow at 7% this year, right? I mean, that's like we should hope to have such good growth, and that's the Chinese quote dilemma unquote of growing at 7% over there. China is like a cash economy. There's no real credit cards in China. They're so untapped in terms of the way that they can leverage the purchasing power of those people when borrowing. You know, you just don't see credit cards and credit card purchase. They haven't leveraged up their economy with taking on a ton of debt in the consumer sector, and that's why I think they're going to have a much greater wave of a stronger base for building prosperity going forward, precisely because they can create their own weather over there, and that undeveloped domestic economy will allow them to grow for a very long period of time. Yes, they have, you know, overproduction of this, that, but that can be absorbed within their economy. We can't absorb what they're producing, but they have the ability to absorb that. We're not growing any new stuff. Thank you, New England Fish. We're not really growing anything or building anything that requires that huge expenditure on that. So keep your eyes on China. It's not getting any attention right now, but its quietness should attract you to, and you should be taking that as a signal that affairs are in fairly good order over there. Now, it's a time for extreme caution. I said on here 2 weeks ago that This is only a time, if this is a good time, like 2 weeks ago, I think we were almost banging on 18,000. It's a good time to get your chips off at that time, because now you just want to be here with sort of the mad money at this point in the market. Because I'm going to tell you, this bubble may not be over in the U.S. and our stocks, and to some extent our property market. You're going to say, "Whoa, shit! How can that be, Rosie? We got all this friggin' turmoil." Well, that's Europe. That's really a Europe thing, and we had the knock-on effect of that from Europe. But I'm telling you, we had one bad day on Friday, and then we come in on Monday. We had a Monday that was down, and today we exactly reversed Monday plus a little bit. So I think I said on my Sunday update, I wouldn't be surprised if we were back scraping 18,000 on the Dow again. And if we do break through, it's going to really blow people away, because then they'll be convinced there's something wrong with the basic fundamental money policy of the U.S. with our low interest rates and that kind of shit. But why can't I go along for the ride? Just because something's screwed up doesn't mean it can't give you some short-term pleasure instead of pain. So gold and silver, we've had some arguments here before, TR, about, we got good preppers on here that make great sense. They say over the long run, Rose, you can't do shit with gold and silver. You can't light a fire with it. You can't kill a bear. You can't catch a fish with it. That's exactly true. But there's a distance between now and that time. And between then and now, we have the big grab for gold and silver. It's been going on for some time now, and we'll have to see if that gold stays above 1,300. I'm guessing, since it took it so long to get above that it's probably going to stay above that level now and climb from there. Like I said, I'm not dismissing stocks yet. I've been in there buying yesterday and buying some stuff. I might get screwed, but I'm playing with the house's money now. I'm not worried. I've taken so much of my stuff out. So you want to be out of long-term rates too. They're going to reverse hard sometime. Those bond funds and other things. That's like a time bomb. That's like a ticking time bomb. It's going to be the next disaster that hits when that reverses. But if you do need to borrow now. Rates are so low right now, and if things get worse and the economy turns south in a bad way, you're going to have a very difficult time going to a bank and getting a loan at that point. So you want to strike while the getting's good, before they start tightening up their standards and making it very difficult to arrange loans. You also need to go out there, if you have any credit card debt, get one of those 0% fund balance transfers, that you can pay off your balance. You can put it over to one of those zero balance cards and pay it off. That could be a help a lot too. Gwen says, Rosie, how do you see real estate going the rest of the year to next year? There's going to be a short-term little blip here with this going on, but I think the demand for real housing is so real, especially out here in California. We're suffering for people to have places to live. I think the U.S. can still kind of create its own weather with what's going on here with our low interest rates. And when the dust settles from Europe, what alternatives do you really have now? You look at a stock like Pepsi-Cola, you think, grandma and grandpa, well, I can get 0.015% on my CD for the next 5 years, or I can get 3% from Pepsi-Cola or 3M, or 4% from some other blue chip, United Technologies or something like that. There's still going to be that attractiveness of those dividends that are hanging out there in the terms of supporting people on pensions and things. So Vival says, yeah, rental property's hot because few can afford a mortgage. Yeah, It's very hard. They're still clamped down. We talked about how Obama had Janet Yellen come into the White House, and I'm sure he started putting his finger on her chest and saying, you know what, it's time to lighten up on these lending now. We're hurting. We got to get these people some housing and stuff. So very true. I just think China is going to be the ultimate beneficiary from the breakup of this Brexit thing, simply because it's perceived, or people see it's the most stable economic entity in the world, when everything else is kind of whirling around, and the Japanese are as fucked as anybody. Trust me, they're in real bad shape. But sometimes the most stable thing suddenly looks pretty good to people, and their stock prices are still very low relative to where they were. In other words, we're up here, they're here. So where's the greater value? Well, I'm expecting a bubble up here, but I'm just saying there's good. If you're a basic value investor, that's a good place to be. That through funds like the CAF, the China Fund, run by Morgan Stanley, New York Stock Exchange listed, because they give a broad exposure to the whole Class A share market, which is only open to domestic Chinese. But if you're risk adverse in any way, this market is not for you. Now, Survival says, I believe China is hiding their true financial condition. I'm going to flip that around on you. I think China is hiding their true financial condition, which is better than they advertise. And they often cry poor mouth on currencies and, oh, we're weak, because they don't want their currency to appreciate. They don't want it to follow the natural course of the trade flows. Where is all the money going in the world today? It's all sucking towards China, okay? This great river of money. So obviously it's in their benefit to keep that channeling along as possible. And I really believe the Bank of China they're very slick people over there. I've worked with them. I've had dealings with people at the Bank of China way back in the day, and these people are slick, and these people are smart, and they figure the best thing to do is go out there and pour mouth about conditions and other things, and that helps to keep the pressure off of us to have to contribute to any bailouts, and it also keeps the pressure from pushing our currency higher, which could hurt our trade balance. So I think it's interesting. Survival, we're looking at the same thing. You're probably thinking China is hiding a bad financial condition. I think they're sandbagging us on their economy to try to pour mouth things. So, all right. So surprisingly, yeah, I'm going to see if I'm looking forward to see if the bubble rebuilds again. If we start making our way back. We're not that far from an all-time high, despite all the calamity and it's terrible, it's the end of the world. We're only about 700-800 points from an all-time high, which is about 5%. So don't be surprised if this market is like Lazarus. It's going to keep rising from the dead because of the forces of interest rates and a shitty monetary policy. Hi, Dish. Nice to see you. So I think that's it. If you want to, I know that was long tonight, but it was a good night to cover this. It was.
I mean, having you on here, I mean, come on, since Thursday, Friday, it's been turmoil in the markets and the country. I mean, all kind of shit's been going on. There was some stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I think when it comes, my caveat with the Chinese would be, always take everything you hear out of China with a grain of salt and wonder if it serves the Chinese economic growth machine to put that information out. How many times over the last 2 years before the shit hit the fan did China get called on the carpet for not letting their currency appreciate enough? And they're getting an unnatural advantage on trade because they keep the value of the Chinese yuan as low as possible to not hurt their exports. Well, what better way to relieve that pressure? It's like a one of those, what the hell do you call that? Pressure relief valve on a pressure cooker. You hit that once in a while and tell people how bad it is over there, and your state debt is eating you alive. And that just, you know what that does? That keeps everybody off your back. Oh, you poor guys, we didn't know that was going on. Oh, it's cool. Sorry, we'll worry about it somewhere else. I've seen that. I've seen that through time. Don't fool yourself. Good stuff is they're very strongly based in TR. You shook your head when I said they're not even leveraged with credit card debt or anything like that. Everything's a cash and carry economy.
Oh, I definitely believe that with China. I mean, you
don't arrange a mortgage in China, to buy. You better have cash money and have a ton of signers on that other stuff. They're a much stronger founded banking system right now than what they're dealing with in the UK. But even in our country, TR, Chase Bank, Citibank, they're almost walking around like a fighter that just took a huge uppercut in the 13th round. They're just staggering around now, losing tremendous amounts of capital value because it's going to be even harder. Their international banking network in Europe that used to be an asset is now a friggin' liability to them because there's no way to make money over there. Now they have all this heavy infrastructure of grand office buildings in the Canary Wharf district of London and the financial district, and they've got very little ability for their traders to make money to sustain that. So meanwhile, and they're stuck in 2, 3, 5-year leases that they have to continue to honor, and it's like having a leech on you when that occurs. So it's a very interesting time.
I like to say, I'm sure China's hurting to a certain degree because that boom of them building up their country and manufacturing. I mean, they were in like hyperdrive building up their manufacturing, and then the world kind of slowed down. So I'm sure it hurt them, but at the same time, they still got all the manufacturing.
Yeah, and they've never done much to build out their own infrastructure. Nothing to improve their quality of life. My daughter's over there now. The air pollution is horrendous in Beijing and these places, but everything's booming. I mean, it comes a point they're going to have to face what we faced in 1967 with when Love Canal, when that all those babies with birth defects were being born near Buffalo, and you had the Cuyahoga River catching fire in Cleveland because nobody gave a shit. It was boom times, baby. Just dump that crap right into the river and it empties into Lake Erie and it'll take care of it. But now look at how clean it is. You can fish and swim in Lake Erie. They need to clean up. There's so much opportunities for ways to invest in the Chinese that they're going to have to improve their standard and their quality of life over there is so low compared to ours. So I think they're going to take their money and start to address those issues of less cars on the road, more public transportation, more parks, more greenery, more recreational opportunities. Shanghai Disney just opened over in Shanghai, the latest Disney. That's all new to them. Entertainment's not been a big part of Chinese communist mind for 60 years. It hasn't been a factor. We're supposed to work. We're not supposed to have, Chairman Mao teaches us life is class struggle. That's what it's all about. It's not all about amusement, study hard for school. Well, they look like they're ready to start relaxing a little bit and having a little bit of fun to me. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah. I don't know. Who knows what's going on? I mean, there's just so much going on. It's hard to say. I do think some hard times are coming for most of the world. I'm not saying the shit's going to absolutely hit the fan, but there's definitely going to be some hard times coming. It's just we've just built it all up on almost like false hope. Well, what was it? False hopes and blah blah blah, and then we got all the turmoil happening in the world, wars and
where did it all come from? It all came out of the fucking Great Depression. That's where it all came out of. We had a bad period, which is very short terms, and which was very short lived in terms of economic history. 3 or 4 very difficult years that we were just starting to come out of and build on a strong base. And just then, just as things were turning up, and remember, the stock market had the biggest rally in its history from 1932 to 1933. Before Roosevelt even took office, the stock market was rallying and things were starting to turn the corner. And then all of a sudden, what happened? We had a New Deal come in because Hoover didn't have enough sense to at least give people some food, some blocks of government cheese, some handouts, just something to tide them over. So we started to create these make work, and we had relief programs. Well, that set in motion the whole idea that government is responsible for the well-being of the individual. Up until 1933, that was unheard of in America, that the government would ever get involved. That was up to your church, that was up to your family, that was up to your community to take care of you if something went wrong. The last place you ever turned to was the government for that kind of help. Well, that all changed with Roosevelt, and that was the kickoff of the gigantic social experiment of American socialism, of more government programs, more of a manipulated economy, everybody should go to college. Let's start lending money to kids. Everybody should have a house. Let's get the government in the housing. You see, everything, let's get the government in the medical business. Let's make it cheaper. Everything the government has touched is fucked up. Every aspect of American life that they've decided to, quote, make better, unquote, they've ended up just basically gutting it and making a mess out of it. And that's my opinion. Now we're at the point where we can't possibly conceive of cutting back benefits for people. But just look at Venezuela if you want a preview of coming attractions when the money runs out. It's a scary thing.
We've talked about it, if not on this chat, on other chats. I can't think offhand of any government program, department, anything that has ever fucking worked. Ever. They can't. Right. The post office is always on the brink of failing. I mean, Social Security, welfare, the food stamp program. I mean, there's nothing. Social Security. I mean,
how do you like your Department of Education? How do you like your Veterans Affairs? It's a wonder our missiles even fly right sometimes. I mean, it's just.
How's Obamacare working out for most people?
Oh. How do you think it's working out? It's a disaster for it's just like, we're here from the government, we're here to help. It's like, oh Christ, Reagan was right. The most dangerous words in the American lexicon. I'm here from the government and I want to help. Right? It's like, no, thank you. That's where it all began. And we're fighting these stupid little things about, they still waste time with Second Amendment. Let people have their guns and move on to the serious shit. No law-abiding person gives a shit. They're not going to go rob a bank and do crazy shit any more than they would today. So just let this shit alone.
Well, we created more poverty by doing these programs.
And dependency. Generation after generation feels it's an entitlement now that somebody else should carry them along. And you know what? We got less people carrying the burden than we probably have proportionally in history. And the load is getting mighty heavy on the average working person here now. And when you consider we're carrying the equivalent of the New England states on just disability right now that has to be funded, you can imagine the stress that's coming down on the average worker in this nation today with taxes, and it's terrible. It's not fair.
Yeah, and you did touch on one good, not a good point, but a point. And this is something that I've said for years, and I didn't even know all the ins and outs of it. Is with a lot of those programs, we created a vicious cycle where they almost can't get out of it.
Yep.
I mean, it's like it's one of those things that's going to have to be weaned down. You can't just stop it. You can't end it. But at the same time, what it has created.
you build a government personnel structure that starts to have political power. You can't. These people vote. Hey, whoa, whoa, we're voters. Don't cut us. You know, you're going to be out of office. Be careful. Just tax that rich guy over there. You know, yeah. It's just that you look at every department there, and it's just nothing but a bloody mess. It's like our IRS. The easiest thing in the world should be able to figure up somebody's income tax every year. When I lived in Hong Kong, they just had your employer tell you what your earnings were for the year, and they sent you a postcard that said, "This is your amount that you owe in taxes." You go trotting down to the Inland Revenue, and you go pay your taxes down there. And that's it. You don't have the money. You arrange a loan from the banks. No big deal. They handle it. And here, there are no accountants really, tax accountants in Asia. They wouldn't waste their time with that bullshit. It's like it'd be a joke over there. It'd be nonsensical to them to have an infrastructure of people just to help you figure what your taxes are. So that, you know what, the government just figures, we'll figure it for you. There it is.
Well, with us shipping our manufacturing overseas over the decades, not just here lately, but decades, look at how many, along with these programs, how many people work for the federal and state governments. It's an overwhelming number. I mean, you know, it blows your mind if you look up how many government employees there are. And most of it probably is for, you know, the welfare programs, the food stamps, and this aid and that aid, and IRS, and oh my God.
Let's look at California. I mean, I love living out here. Sure, we got problems. We do stupid shit out of here. We have a lot of illegal immigrants here in California. So instead of trying to bring these people within the system and have them liable for some type of monetary payment for being here, what I would call some special tax for being an illegal immigrant. Okay, you want to be a legitimate, okay, well, here's what you owe for you've already, you know, the services that you've net taken out of this country by having your kids born at the taxpayer's expense in hospitals, having a free education, having free lunches, having free vaccinations, free health care, free after-school daycare and programs. This is what you have to pay back to our system here. But instead, now we put aside money in California for I don't call them undocumented. That's like a feel-good bullshit word. Illegal immigrants in this nation to go to college, to get free rides at college because they're, you know, they should be able to go to college too. So instead of putting money to fund the regular taxpayers in California that want to go to state and universities, well, we're going to put some aside for a new pool of money for the underserved illegal immigrant population so that they can go to college too. It's just like, why even have laws? You know, no wonder people pick and choose which laws to follow and which don't, because the government does the same fucking thing. Monkey see, monkey do. It's all a bunch of bullshit. So.
And what it's done is it's and not in just one generation, of course. This is, like you said, brought up. This is going back a long time of creating a moral structure that just lends itself to not be productive and not participate. And in some ways, I think some of it is traps. They get in traps that it's hard to get out. And none of it's been good for the country, period.
None of it's good. Certainly not good for the future prosperity. When you consider the demands of the technology age, and you see how, on average, mathematically and scientifically illiterate we're becoming, and especially in comparison to a place like Asia, it should frighten anybody. The demands for evolution never get less; they get more. As you have to be more efficient, you have to be more productive to advance forward as a species, not less. You know, it's as if half the bee colony just says, well, let's take the rest of the year off and we'll just let these dumbass worker bees go out there and harvest the honey and we'll just eat it all. I mean, is that not equivalent to what we have today in this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Same thing in Europe. You know, the social network, and you hear a dummy like Bernie Sanders stand up there and talk about, you know, we should all have $1,000 a week. Well, who in the hell is going to pay for that in the, you know, you goofball? I mean, it's just stupid shit. Stuff seems so easy to you when you're not the one paying the bill for it, you know.
I did a little I won't even say I did a little research, but come across articles and stuff on Bernie Sanders. He didn't hold a job till he was 44 years old, and that was a political position. He was a damn bum and a hippie or whatever.
Yeah, of course. But he wants to tell you what makes the American economy tick. That's the stuff that scares me. Now, I don't consider Trump much better on the other side, to be honest. But, you know, we don't have a really stellar choice. But I've traditionally voted libertarian and stuff. And, you know, I know that's kind of a wasted vote these days. But I'll probably still make my protest vote on election day and everything. So, I mean, it's just, Bernie is just, but beware, if we go down, it'll be people like him in the next cycle that get a lot more support when people
these millennials that think just like Bernie, which I think some of the stuff he's saying, he's probably just saying stuff that he hadn't really ever said before, just because he knows he's got that millennial type people following him. It would become obsessed with him. He knows, hey, if I say free college, they're gonna go for it. If I say everybody needs $1,000 a week, you know.
Yeah. Regardless of who has to, pick up the tab for that. That's always the thing. At least Hillary Clinton, she doesn't got shit to say because she doesn't have anything to offer. But at least she doesn't open her trap and say stupid stuff about free giveaways. She's smart enough not to go down that route. So I'll give her that over what Bernie does. So I don't know. Who in the hell knows? So I don't know. I get frustrated. Frustrated by the hole we're in and how long the can was kicked down the road without fixing some of these basic problems. So now we'll all smart people prep and prepare, and dumb people get to be roadkill.
I think you would agree with me. The presidential candidates, I'm not saying that everybody that ran in primaries, I'm just saying what ended up being the candidates has been going downhill for decades on both sides. I hadn't been excited about the Republican Party, and I consider myself a libertarian. I hadn't seen anybody exciting on the Republican side in ever, maybe. I mean, when I couldn't vote, I mean, Reagan was pretty good, but I've done enough research on him. He wasn't all that, but he was pretty good. But, you know,
we haven't had the ability to force forward the really good leaders because they've also been in a supportive, you know, socialist political system where you don't have to be great. You don't have to have leadership skills to be a standard. As much as I disagree with a lot of Franklin D. Roosevelt's policies, you cannot deny that he was an extremely effective leader, not only in pulling the United States psychologically out of a depression mentality, but also waging World War II on not one, but two different fronts. So he'll always go down in history as a great president, but we don't have that. We've managed to soft and feather our nest that we don't have that crucible of tough times that forces a real strong leader to come forward. So our economy's also been very bad for political leadership evolution too, with our namby-pamby socialist way of doing things. You know what used to be great, TR? You would have Democrats and Republicans. They would meet. Republicans would meet in Philadelphia. The Democrats would meet in Chicago, and they would just close the doors and they would haggle it out. And they would come out of there and fight and scream. And they'd come out of that convention after 2 or 3 weeks, and they'd have a presidential candidate. You know, they selected. Somebody came out of that crucible of that fight to unify that party. We don't have that today. We have all these super delegates and all this stuff that basically negates the primary stuff anyway. It makes it kind of useless. So, we've shot ourselves in the foot that money and not a great speech or a great motivational burst forward could get our country going. And again, we have party hack politics is the driver of our future. So it's no wonder. It's a great observation that you made that we don't have great leaders anymore because we have not had the times that create them. We probably will. We could have a terrible one on the flip a coin. It could be real great or it could be real bad. I mean, that's the Hitler road that you go down. So it's a scary process. You would have never had an Abraham Lincoln if you had a primary thing. He would have gotten hardly a vote anywhere that really mattered. So there was something to be said for everybody getting together in a party and having their own say, and then either the people like it or they don't. That's it.
Anybody that would be a good leader, for the most part, they don't want to have nothing to do with the damn thing, the circus act that we got nowadays.
Yep.
And I think that's why we get your McCains and Bob Doles and freaking Trump, and don't get me wrong, this will be, unless some crazy shit happens, I'm pretty sure he's going to get the nomination. This will be the first time I voted Republican for president in a long time. I will say that because I've voted Libertarian the last 2 presidential elections at least.
Yeah.
Maybe one before that. But.
Yeah, I'm going to keep voting. I'm going to stick with my party, my few faithful brothers and sisters, and pull that lever again on election day, just so I can hold my head up high, going saying who I voted for. In that,
a lot of people say, there's been arguments. People say voting don't work and stuff, and I brought it up to a guy today, not today, but a guy at work here recently in the last couple of weeks or something. And sometimes he goes off anyway. But I brought up the point. I was like, look, if voting did not matter, Jeb Bush would be the nominee for the Republican Party because they wanted Jeb Bush, period. When it all started, it was going to be Jeb Bush. He could not get the support. And no matter how bad, no matter how crooked they could be with the voting system, with this electronic voting and stuff, there's no way in hell they knew they couldn't pull that off with as much support Trump had. And so little support Jeb had,
Shit, he couldn't even carry his own state,
No.
I thought,
And that's when Rubio got out. He couldn't carry his own state.
Well, that's a warning sign right there. And but our system is kind of fucked. So we've had this milquetoast low stress system that's won't produce anything the way it's going. Just a turd to occupy the White House. That's all it'll produce. A nice soft turd to sit there and run things, unfortunately. So
yeah,
I'm gonna get a cup of coffee. I'll be right back to you.
Okay. Yeah. But and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I'm really scared if damn Hillary gets the fucking presidency. That scares the shit out of me. I don't care how bad a president we've had with Obama. Obama will seem like a Reagan compared to fucking Hillary. That's how bad I really think she'll be. I know some people don't agree with my views on Obama, even though I don't think he was a good president. Well, we ain't had one since when? Maybe Kennedy? He could have been a lot worse. He did not exercise and flex his muscles like he could. Now, granted, we've had a Republican House and Senate for several years now, but he had a majority, at least in one, if not both, a few years ago, and they could have done some really bad shit, but they didn't. So yeah, you gotta look at it. Go back and look. Who had control of what? What did they accomplish? Well, they didn't do what they could have done, I'm not saying they should have. I'm just saying they could have been really bad, you know. But anyway, I voted today, matter of fact. The only one, it was a secondary runoff. We had like a primary and then a runoff. Because they had like a lot of people running for the same offices. And we got rules here in South Carolina, at least, unless somebody gets a 50% majority, they would pick the top two and do a runoff. And the only vote that was on the ballot in my district was for sheriff. So, and I do not like our sheriff whatsoever. So I went and done my anti-sitting sheriff vote today. Hopefully he got it. I haven't been able to look at it yet. Let's see what's going on out there. Yeah, I agree, Fuzz T. Hillary should be burning a bonfire just like her and her husband did with people in Waco. Yeah, but if you do your research on the presidents, if you go back and what they've done and what they've and they look at their speeches and years ago, way back, I think you could see a lot of them like learn things, you know, like they actually went in there to be president and learned that they were just a puppet and somebody was pulling the strings. It was really just getting started back in your 40s and 50s, or mainly 50s and 60s. But Eisenhower's what do you call it? His final address or exit speech, whatever it is. What is it? I think they call it final address or final whatever. But everybody needs to go look up Eisenhower's farewell speech. That's what it was, farewell speech. You know, he voted out of office or whatever, and that was his last speech before the public. That's when the term, the industrial military complex, was coined, because he saw it in its infancy and realized those son of a bitches was pushing his buttons and pulling his strings, and they wasn't a damn thing he could do about it, even as president. And he warned the American people back then. Yep. And nobody listened. But if you wanted to go see a really good speech, there's a short version and there's a long version. I think the long version is only about 15 minutes. But
yeah, you want to read some other scary stuff. Read Herbert Hoover's campaign speeches of 1932 about a dependent citizenry on government things and what may await us down the road when that pretty scary stuff. So,
yeah, it's been a lot of warnings. It's amazing.
Well, we don't learn from history, so we repeat it. I mean, human nature never changes, so you always going to repeat the same lessons. The generation that remembered is gone, so you have one good generation, then the next generation has to take the hit again of relearning it. You know, you can't help being human, but I don't imagine that will ever change.
Wasn't it Jefferson that said even after we got established and come up with the Constitution and the country and was getting all that started, and even I think it was Jefferson, I could be wrong, could have been one of the other founding fathers, but he even said that the revolution about every 20 years is needed to keep the fire of liberty in our souls, or whatever, because he knew people get lazy. You know, you work your ass off, you die, you struggle, and if that goes good for 10 or 20 years, people are going to get lazy.
Well, we've almost reached that tipping point in this country, and the election of Hillary Clinton should just about seal it of socialism, you know, what I call the blue ribbon socialism. That you don't say it, but in effect, it's the nanny state, and that'll just be the final hurrah for America. Though there, as we go hurtling down a path of destruction, because she's got no concept of we've lost the ability to know what really drives us forward as a country anymore. So we'll get bread and circuses and let them eat cake. Be some good fun times, but
yeah. I know. I'm sure everybody's heard the analogy. Well, it's not even an analogy; it's just fact. Every society went through damn near anarchy to a democracy to some type of republic to oligarchy, back to a kingdom, and the whole damn thing just keeps going in circles. Just throughout time, it's happened over and over and over.
That's why war is so great, because it allows you to shed your obligations, whether you're a winner or a loser. In the case of Germany, you look at the debt levels of Germany, and I still say World War I was really at the roots of so many of our problems today, and it was really a religious war. But Germany had such a terrible load to bear after the peace conference that they got together to decide reparations in Italy, France, and England stuck it to them so much that they could not hope to pay. So they just started inflating the currency away and eventually went to war. But when the war was over, they got rebuilt and they had a new Deutschmark, and all that past debt stuff was all gone. And they were off to, this is how they got a fresh start as a society. So, that's another thing that sadly war does for you. And even the victors sometimes will, if they win enough, they just write off what they owed to the losers. So.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy. Man, I can't say that I've been enlightened, my entire adult life by no means. It's probably only the past. I can't say that I was like totally stupid, I mean, I paid attention to some stuff. I just, the average person paid attention to some stuff, but not everything, and didn't look into stuff. I took things I didn't trust politicians, but at the same time, I didn't know how dirty they were. I just thought they were dirty. I had no idea how flat out evil they are or can be. Hell, I think it's probably 2007, 2008 before I really started looking into more in depth. And not that I know everything there is to know, or even what I know may be wrong, but at least I know enough to form an opinion now.
What's funny, TR, could you imagine, the really serious problems think of how lucky we are, if you could use those words today, if you could use that term. We're sitting here with unprecedentedly low interest rates. So think of all the pressure that it takes off the expansion of the national debt that we have. Can you imagine when that bad boy reverses and everybody's going to be borrowing like a house of fire to try to get everything that they can worldwide to to try to close those gaps in budgets and stuff? You talk about a potential horror show when the curtain goes up on Act 2. That's really going to be something to see. But you don't have these people. You don't have Congress convening a working group to figure how are we going to manage this debt going forward. They just go skipping off down the road with nary an idea. Just let it grow. It's like the Christmas song, "Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow, let it grow, let it grow, let it grow." It's gotten so big now it doesn't even matter anymore.
I don't know if that's kind of where you touching on there a little bit, but I was looking up what we pay in interest to the Fed basically, and with these low interest rates, which is another reason I don't really see them going anywhere. When our debt was only I say only like it was little, don't get me wrong. But when our debt was like 10 or 12 trillion, the interest we were paying, which is all we pay, was the same then as it is today with the low interest rates. So if those interest rates got jacked up, they would collapse almost. I won't say immediately, but it's on the verge of collapse anyway. But You know what I'm saying? If the interest rates, I mean, bumped up the prime rates or whatever to 2 or 3% or whatever, it would kill us.
Yeah, that's what I say. That'd be a hell of an act two to think when that happens, and that will happen in that bond market. Well, they'll be carrying them out in body bags out of that when that occurs. I guarantee you that. That's going to be a bloodbath when that comes, when that big reversal comes.
Yeah. Eventually, the rubber band's going to break. The bubble's going to pop. There's going to be a rebuilding process. It might be a different country then, but
yeah, I think it'll nominally be the United States. It might be broken up a little bit, but you never know.
I know eventually that's what's going to happen. I foresee that happening. Not necessarily that another country will take over, but the states will break off from the United States and form smaller unions.
Yeah.
You know, I ain't saying every state will break off individual, but you might have like some southern states that bunch together and say, you know, screw the United States. We're going to do our own thing and whatever. In California, we just need to go ahead and break it off. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, they talk about breaking north and south, breaking it in two parts.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the divide, I think, has gotten worse over the last few hundred years between the north and south and probably east and west. Not necessarily hatred or anything, but as far as were they, maybe it's not, but it's just different. It's different countries, basically.
Yeah.
There's similar stuff, but at the same time, I mean.
Well, what drives that is you start to get, and I'm getting feedback, I think, from you, Mike. That's all right. What drives that is that that imbalance when you're putting more into the system of federalism than you're getting out. And a little bit's okay, but then it reaches a point where you get to basic issues of equity of how much do I have to subsidize those that can't or won't do, and it's that's how things start to get fault lines that break things up when that happens.
But yeah, like you said earlier, just prepare for the worst, see what happens. Not all we can do is ride it out. Ain't a damn thing we can do about any of it.
Yeah. So that was a long thing I was on tonight. So thank you everybody on the side for you know, because we're at a very tough time right now. So there's a lot of material to cover that I didn't expect 2 weeks ago when I sat here. So
yeah.
And you were going to talk
literally
about
the world's a different place than the last time you were here, Rosie.
It is. Now the you know, the question is how much further the European Union will break up, if at all. We shall see that.
I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the last article I read that there's 8 other countries considering referendums to get out of the EU.
Yep. And then you're really going to have a problem with rather poor countries failing to get those subsidies that are keeping going now. It won't be so easy if you're in Greece to turn to a Germany and say, we just want you guys to help us. So.
And I think, I don't know if it's a reaction. I think the EU stepped up their agenda. I read another story. The EU, I don't know that they've proposed it yet, but some of the planning has come out. I hadn't done a lot of research on this, but I don't doubt it one bit because they've been headed that way anyway. Is they want to do away with individual countries, period. And it'll just be the EU.
Look at it this way. It's going to take at least 2 years for Britain to effectively exit the EU. That's going to be a very uncomfortable couple of years sitting around a table with the old boys from mainland Europe. You know, that's going to be you know, they're going to have a lot. They'll be cordial the first time they're there, but they'll have a little say so about things. And you can bet it's not going to be a cakewalk in terms of what the UK is able to negotiate with continental Europe. Ranking says that, what is that? The ranting hit Hunter Thompson was right. We are truly the doomed. But remember, out of every crisis comes a better base for the future. It's just that you may go into the cement mix to help build the base. That's that's the problem. You might get ground up to help be the aggregates that form the concrete. So. That's the hard part. That's why economics, capitalism always wins in the end, because there's no escaping the imperative to be productive, to work and produce.
Yeah, it's just a wait and see game right now, or at least for us anyway. Well, hell, for everybody, I guess. That's one thing I've learned about getting upset about what's going on in the world. In the end, there ain't a damn thing I can do about it.
Well, actually, you are. You know, actually, you certainly are. You know, if you're prepping, you're kind of a. If you can maintain your stores, if you can maintain your personal safety, and keep a low profile, yeah, you're like.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely doing something to increase my chances of things going haywire. I meant just changing the outcome of the politics and all that shit. Yeah.
Yeah, in a macro sense, there's not a damn. You know, the whole shitty structure's got to come down. It's like, TR, if you're a civil engineer and you see a shitty bridge, come on, you know. People tell you think that's going to last. Well, yeah, I can't. Yeah, it'll last. I don't know when it'll go, but yeah, right now it's you know, the son of a bitch is going down. You know, right? I mean, that's what you're looking at with our economic structure that we have here right now. The upside is it'll flush a lot of people out of the workforce. It will temporarily lower America's standard of living more to a world standard of living. But a lot of more people will be productive in doing things, and there'll be a lot more innovation than we have right now, because we don't have any incentive to innovate right now, because our government shields us from the realities of this big bad world. So, aren't we lucky? I mean, I hate to sound so raw about economics, but that's exactly the way I feel about it. It takes no prisoners in the end. No. And those that thought they had a better way inevitably end up just either having their mouths sewn shut or just disappearing as meaningless in the scheme of world events.
Well, I know I've listened to a lot of your financial advice and things, and not just here, but like I say, I try to catch your videos on your financial updates and what have you. And I don't think you have any disillusion of what eventually is going to happen, but we just don't know when that's going to happen. But in the meantime, you just take advantage and play the game, like, you know, play the game. I mean, I don't know if I'm saying that right. I don't mean to insult.
No, that's right. Yeah, no. It's all good. I mean, it's not fun to sit where I sit, TR. And I'm nobody in the scheme of things. I'm a fart in a windstorm in the scheme of things. But I have this, I don't want to call it a burden I have a burden on my mind that I look ahead a lot. And therefore I don't have that calmness of let's just do it one day at a time. There's a sort of a tragic element of knowing what's coming, and then not being able to do anything. Like you said about it, there ain't a damn thing. You know, you see a train come hurtling down a track towards a passenger train coming the other way, and there's not a damn thing that you can you can do about it. You see it coming. You can warn them, but you know that there's no way you're going to prevent the inevitable from happening. So that's the sadness from where I sit and from what I see. Yeah, it's cool to be correct on things and to, but in the long run of things, it's not. It's not a happy. I guess that's why they call economics the dismal science, because it often is bad news.
Well, I know a lot of your house ain't on fire, is it?
No, just the other neighbor. No, this is the guy across the street's burning down. We lost him. No, I'm kidding. No, whenever somebody has heart palpitations, they send a fire truck. They send 2 fire service vehicles and ambo. A little bit of over response. It helps pad the government need for response money and stuff. It's really sad. So
yeah, you probably got a point there.
Yeah,
I've actually talked to people, not a lot of people, but I've actually had it thrown back at me when I was talking to somebody, a friend of mine, that, when I was into and I'm still into it, but kind of like, at first you kind of freaked out when you kind of see what's going on in the world and you open your eyes and turn off the football game or whatever. And I was telling a friend, and she actually told me, she was like, I know stuff like that goes on, but I don't want to know about it.
Yeah.
I just want to live my life and love my kids and be happy.
Yep. And there's a certain joy to that, but once you've studied economics and once you're a armchair student of economics like you, TR, then that burden hits you that you can't escape the reality of that, and that's what makes it difficult. The more you learn, the more really concerned that you get, and I don't like to use the word frightened, but the more nervous you become about the future. It's so nice to walk in that world of just shopping at Macy's and soccer mom and happy dad at the baseball game, but you and I know the reality is something far different that lurks under the surface here,
Well, basically, it's like, the analogy of going down the rabbit hole or pulling back the curtain on the wizard. Yep. Once you do that, there ain't no closing the fucking curtain back.
Mm-hmm. Well, your eyes can't unsee. Your mind can't unread what you now know. And what everybody knows in government and other places, and it comes to a question of who's going to manage it better, a Donald Trump or a Hillary Clinton going forward, because I'm pretty sure if everything's going to blow on one of their watches, it's all going to go to hell. So the traditional politician or the the wild card that comes in there.
I'm gonna go with a wild card myself. He may fuck it up worse than Hillary, but with Hillary, I'm more worried about the hammer coming down. Just fuck it, rip up the Constitution. It's gone. Not that we got much of it anyway. I just really foresee that happening with her. Just not necessarily full martial law, because I don't believe they can do martial law in America. Not in the extent of what we think of when we think of movies or in our mind, because we can't even hold together a third world countries. There's no way in hell they could do martial law in America.
No,
they could do it on a limited basis.
They could do it in some of the big cities, maybe. But
cities. Yeah.
But Sandy put it best over here. No more blissful ignorance. That's a well termed right there. Blissful ignorance is sometimes a beautiful thing, but it doesn't help you be a survivalist and an evolutionary person in the scheme of things either. So it's not just looking out for you; it's also your family too, and trying to make them aware. And open their eyes to some of the realities of the world that we live in, not in a spooky, overly dramatic way, but just say, open a paper once in a while and connect some dots. And, you know what I'm saying, TR? Don't go around blind in life. It's like the people that we've talked about for the last year that have started accumulating gold at the $1,210 level last July when we started these hangouts, they're already being validated for their prepping, so to speak. So
yeah, well, I think it takes a couple of years, but once you level off, once you've looked behind that curtain and seen the wizard, you freak out at first. This is just my experience, and from what I've watched YouTube channels grow and then level off. And I don't mean level off and grow, and I just mean on their intensity of because I've seen it. I went through it. Once you level off, I think there's a certain amount of responsibility to share what you know, your knowledge. If it's rejected, it's rejected. You walk off and okay, whatever. But hell, that's why we're here doing this chat. That's why I make videos. But not all my videos are doom and gloom and all that shit. I try to have fun. I live life. Go have fun.
Well, that's why I just hope that, I know I'm not a prepper, and sometimes I kind of wonder if it's just, if it does if I'm just boring people to death or whatever on here with this stuff, because it's kind of an outlier. I know I'm an outlier in a lot of ways on what people think economically and stuff, but you have a really well-informed and very interested viewership here that watches your chats, even when you came over to this channel. So, I'm not one to hedge myself. That's for sure. You never have to go back and Well,
I think that's one of the things I really like about. Well, a lot of the chats, even your chats, when I get a chance to jump in your chats, a lot of the people know who I am, come over here, or when I'm over there. I don't know what the right term is, but there's a lot of people on YouTube from very, very various backgrounds, countries, political views, everything. And I think we've proven that we can all get along.
Yep. Yeah.
If you listen to the media and politicians, we all hate each other, and believe the hype.
Well,
like we don't have to actually agree with each other on shit, but that don't mean I hate you.
Well, you know what? You remember way back our first chat we came on, and one of the topics that you talked about and that Average Joe talked about was that divide and conquer strategy. One of the most effective ways our government keeps us, what would you say, keeping our eye off the ball, is to get us to fight with each other in this nation. And they've been very effective about that on so many fronts. The Second Amendment front, which shouldn't even be a fight. I don't fight over the freedom of the press. I feel like we got more issues with that sometimes than we do with the right to bear arms. It's amazing how many, everything from abortion to guns to well, you name it, religion and things, they're all pushed to divide in this nation, because the more fractured we are, the less we're able to unify and have change. And I think you were one of the first ones that discussed that last year. I think, as a matter of fact, that was the topic of our very first.
I think it was absolutely the topic, because we had three people that were from about as far polar as you could get is in the spectrum of the American public. These three pie pieces were just as, like I said, it was a transgender, a black guy, and a redneck. I mean, how much different can you fucking get and try to do a chat together and all of us get along?
Exactly. But it all it's all worked out good to a very interesting weekly event here on your channel, and kudos to you. You were able to take it over to fun fisher. So
yeah, we'll ride this out for a little while. Like the chats are still pretty popular. I'm not giving up on the chats or anything. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying I'm ending the chats or anything, but I'm kind of surprised we went this long, and they're actually still just as popular. Probably actually gained popularity. So
yeah, because I would say having 60 people on getting to peak holiday time is quite a testament to your skill in bringing people together and having a hangout. So I've enjoyed it. There's not one time that I haven't felt like coming on and speaking my mind here. So it's been a great thing.
Everybody's got a open soapbox here. So
yep.
It was a little bit ago, but Blue, I don't know if you saw his comment when that fire truck went by.
Yeah, it was Rick.
Yeah, it's Rick. Coming by to harass you.
Yeah, Jen's giving him a piece of pizza over there. You know? That's funny. Did you want to talk about, I think you got, about 10 minutes left. Did you want to mention anything about Turkey? We saw another terrible.
Oh, yeah, we should touch on that. Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some more details out. What I looked at right before we started this was 31 dead for sure. And I don't know, 50 or 60 injured, probably more. I've seen a couple of conflicting stories. It just happened a couple of hours ago. So not a lot of truth, it'll all wash, come to get count. But I saw a video on it where it actually showed the bombs going off. And all I can say is this stuff is just going to continue. And it's almost like every time one happens, it's like it inspires others to do it, and I don't know the answer to stop it, but I know the shit we're doing ain't helping, and inviting, I don't care. It's not racism. It is not racism. This is a letting in extreme religion. We're going to have to put a handle on that.
I think Turkey is so fascinating because in so many ways, Turkey's in a unique position because it's a NATO ally. It's a Muslim nation. It's a NATO ally, albeit rather secular Muslim nation. There's still elements within that, just like there are in Saudi Arabia, that would like things really radicalized. They would like to rebuild the Ottoman Empire that surrounded the Mediterranean and reached all the way up to almost Vienna, Austria. And they must be kind of torn there about whether to go with the tide of radicalism or whether to try to staunch that and hold that back and kind of become the what would you call it, the buffer zone, the shock absorber for the West. That's all they look like they are now. They look like a damn shock absorber that's going to take a lot of hits coming up, because of the position they occupy in world affairs politically.
Yeah, I think we even talked about this, how they have been supporting ISIS, but when you got back to the Ottoman Empire, even though, to be honest, I don't know that much about it. I just know a little bit about it. They wasn't that radical. They somewhat lived in peace during that time. They had a big empire. They were able to kind of keep a peace going. I'm not saying it was all roses or what have you, but it ain't the shit we got going on now. Go ahead.
Until 1914, take Palestine for example. That's what it was called. All religions lived in peace in Palestine because the Turks had a hands-off policy towards worship, and as long as you weren't causing mayhem or any problem, everybody got along reasonably well. And it wasn't until, again, I go back to World War I being the root cause of all the problems we have today, because World War I totally destabilized and destroyed the Ottoman Empire, broke it up into these segments that we have of Lebanon and Syria and what was later to become Israel and Egypt and all along the Mediterranean. And we're still paying a heavy price for that today, for the breaking up of that, and the Zionism that came and took place with the founding of the nation of Israel there. Well, that's for another night, I guess, to get into that. But all that worked to tremendously destabilize that region. And you're exactly correct. Up until World War I, everybody peacefully coexisted in the Middle East, and it wasn't really because, like you said, Turkey was a strong ruler. The Sultan and the Muftis there kept a pretty tight grip on things. And once that grip was gone and things broke up and became cannibalized, these small little states, that's when things really got bad. And then you stick a Jewish state right in the middle of that, and it's just a recipe for hundreds of years of strife in that region.
I think to sum it up, I mean, like you said, hell, we could do a chat on this, and I'm not even that educated on it, but we're seeing it today, even with Iraq, with Libya, where it's like when a country starts kind of doing well and they're standing on their own and they're striving to do better, there's powers that be that they just will not let it happen. And I'm sure it was the same with the Ottoman Empire. The West, not necessarily us, but the West, they didn't want to see this big power here. They're scared it's going to get too powerful, and they want to break it up before it gets too powerful, and I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that, don't get me wrong, but in a nutshell.
Well, I'll tell you what, Turkey today, and deep inside of Turkey, they have that wish and desire, especially amongst a lot of the young Turks over there, to have a reunification of what was the Ottoman Empire, because that was a very significant force up until World War I. I mean, there was corruption and other things, but it kept things stable over in that over in the Middle East there. But now with the trying to put that back together again, also it doesn't even talk to the Russian side. You probably don't know the historical bad blood that exists between Russia and Turkey. Russia to the north of Turkey, there's tremendous hatreds that came out of pre-World War I, and there's so much land that Turkey would like to recover that they think that the Russians stole from them. So I think you have to be prepared for Turkey to be a gaining power over that region. I already see signs that it's occurring now. The strengthening and importance of Turkey in the Middle East, they're starting to stand out as the really smart players, if you can use that term over there, that looking past all this radicalism to a more political union, to get more power on a political base.
And they flexed their muscles because we hadn't really heard about Turkey in years, and all of a sudden we keep hearing about Turkey, and next thing you know, they shoot a damn Russian jet down, and they didn't even get a smack on the hand on that. So they're flexing their muscles, and they're getting in. They got pulled off the bench.
It's one of those clash areas in the world that few people know about the history, and it's worth exploring the history of the Ottoman Empire, particularly from about 1850 onward. It's very fascinating over there, the bad blood between Turkey and Russia, and I expect that to be a flashpoint in the future, especially as Turkey gets stronger here. But I also expect that the West is looking for Turkey to be an ultimate solution to some of the bullshit that's going on in Syria and some other places over there too. I wouldn't be surprised if they're kind of looking to them to exert some power.
Yeah.
And they're not really Islamist as much as they are just politicos and secular politicians eager to expand influence in that region again. Give people an alternative to radical Islam, a political solution to gaining power and influence. And a lot of people are liking that. Anybody that thinks it's great life in the Middle East and living in these terror shitholes day in and day out, generations are tired of this stuff now. They're worn out of a lot of this stuff. Yeah, the Moors are on the move. That's exactly correct.
Well, there's already been a lot of stories about how the inadvertently all the shit that we've helped or actually flat out caused in the Middle East, all the turmoil, chaos, and all that. One of the biggest, I won't say it's totally, but one of the biggest selling points to ISIS to young men is it's a job.
Yep.
They ain't no other way to make money, so it's a job. I'm not saying that every one of them is going to be a suicide bomber, but just far as participating and moving equipment and getting in battles and all that, hell, they're getting paid for it. They're mercenaries because there's nothing else to do. We done blew up every fucking thing.
Well, how deep does that go, though? I mean, there comes a point where generations become tired of living it. Like you don't hear a lot in Palestine, the Palestinian areas right now, because people are just worn out from 50, 60 years of strife, and this generation they're just exhausted from fighting and losing people and family members and losing land, and just every year loss. It's sad. And I think there's going to come a day, we can't perceive it here, but there's going to come a day when they're just tired of it, and they're going to have had enough of radicalism, just like this nation had enough of the hippie movement and all that stuff in the 1970s, and we reached a strong and almost violent turning point when Reagan took office. People were just tired of the bullshit.
Yeah, I think I hope you're right. Yeah, and I
think you. Too.
Yeah, I see the logic behind that. I really do. Yeah.
We just have generations that have been lost and children blown up and now grandchildren. It's like, when does it end? When does fucking a family stop? And all for the sake of radical Islam. It's not going to go on forever. That's a hard selling point over the long haul. Very hard. It's like it's like trying to get crusades going again. It sounds good for the first, second, and third, but by the sixth crusade, you get a pretty motley crew of people going along, and same kind of deal. People just get worn out too, are just plain worn out.
Yeah. Well, eventually it'd be like, what's the point of even living? Period. What are we fighting for?
Exactly. Yeah, what do we have left when we win the battle? A heap of concrete and no infrastructure, disease, nothing to eat. Is this the world we want? Well, I'm hoping we're going to reach that tipping point over there.
Yeah, I hope so too. All right. It's been a couple of hours, so we're right at it. We filled that time up pretty good, just me and you, Rosie.
We always do.
We'll go ahead and close this out.
World events help us a little bit too, I have to say.
Yeah.
And again, thank you everybody on the side chat for their forbearance, and everybody that's watching. It's not the easiest stuff to cover off on here. I know sometimes it can be deathly boring compared to guns and prepper stuff, but it's like the vital blood of the nation and things. So thank you.
All right, and I just want to add, in case anybody didn't see it, or if you see this later, I did put links to people that normally come on this chat. Rosie's on there, Pop's Quest, Blue 823, or just Blue, Rick. There's some other people on there that come in, not necessarily every week, but they here and there. So I did put the links in there. So if anybody wants to find Rosie or some other people that's usually on here, just look in the description. It's there. And is there anything else you want to end with, Rosie?
No,
Outros or anything?
it was a great chat. You know, once in a while, prayer doesn't hurt either. You know, and I don't mind admitting that. I mean, the world's a pretty screwed up place right now, and sometimes it's nice to acknowledge things in the world that are greater than we are. So I'll just leave it at that. But it was a great chat tonight, and thanks TR. And of course, anybody's welcome. I do a Wednesday free-for-all chat, and then a Saturday night one. And of course, everybody's welcome to them. And again, thank you, TR.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Rosie, and helping me out. And I had a feeling you would probably make sure and be here tonight for sure, because there was a lot of shit that went on since Thursday or Friday, and a lot of stuff to cover. And I appreciate your input, your knowledge, and years of experience in the financial markets. And everybody really appreciates it. I can sincerely say that. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
All right. With that, we're going to close this out. Thanks, everybody out there, and we'll see you next week.